Welcome back to a new episode of Plan C, Ocean Interventions to Address Climate Change. I'm your host, Anna Madlener, MRB Manager at the Carbon to Sea Initiative, and I'm not joined as always by my co-host Will Burns. Instead, like last episode, my colleague Danny Golowski, Senior Manager for Communications at Carbon to Sea, is here with me. This is part 2 of the Ocean Vision Summit podcast episode, so if you haven't listened to last week's episode yet, be sure to go back to that one first and come back to today's episode afterwards. Today, we are sharing insights from speakers of the summit that touch upon the other 3 R's of Ocean Vision's program: reduce, repair, and reach. You will be hearing from Nikhil Nilakantan, Senior Program Officer at Ocean Visions, working on the new program development for Reduce, followed by Marianne Hagen of the Seabed Curtain Project, who explores the feasibility of stopping sea ice melting. And finally, Kilaparthi Ramakrishna, who goes by Rama, who is the Director of the Marine Policy Center and Senior Advisor to the President on Ocean and Climate Policy at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. He talks about ways forward for international ocean climate ambitions. And without further ado, we bring you the second half. Hi, Nikhil. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Anna and Danny. Thanks for having me.
We are actually recording this particular piece of the summit episode after the summit. So we're back behind our computer screens at home at our desks. But nonetheless, we wanted to use this opportunity to talk to you, Nikhil, about your work at Ocean Visions and the particular work you presented last week at the summit. So why don't we start with a quick introduction and what we're here to talk about?
Great. Yeah, and first off, it was great to meet you both at the summit. I felt like there was a lot of energy there, and I'm already missing my time there. I'm the Senior Program Officer at Ocean Visions, focused on one of our 4 pillars, Reduce, which is the role of the ocean in reducing emissions. And I know a lot of people, listeners of this podcast, know of Ocean Visions because of our work in marine carbon dioxide removal, but it's critical that we focus on reducing emissions, and the ocean can play a major role in helping to reduce emissions.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear about details of that, because decarbonization hasn't yet been a core focus on the podcast. We focused a lot more on carbon removal. So I'm curious if you could share a little bit more about the different fields and, I guess, industries that folks should be aware of in the ocean that could contribute to decarbonization.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty broad area of work, right? It can range from cutting emissions in ocean industries like shipping and fisheries and aquaculture, to harnessing energy sources such as wind, waves, tides, as well as using materials from the ocean to reduce emissions on land-based activities. I think a lot of people are excited and have heard of the use of seaweed to reduce methane emissions in agriculture. It's a pretty vast topic. So we had to do a significant amount of analysis to ensure that we were evaluating these on sort of a level on the fit with Ocean Visions and our strengths.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? This is a vast and also critical part of the work. How did you go about prioritizing?
So to do that, we analyzed these pathways, and we looked at about over 20 of them. And we used key criteria like greenhouse gas mitigation potential, technology readiness, how ready are they to be commercially deployed, and also market viability. What is the potential size of the market, which influences things like how many people are going to be attracted to solve these problems. We also conducted over 40 expert interviews across a range of sectors and expertise to refine our understanding. So what we then did was we looked at roughly the top 10 by mitigation potential, that these had potential of about 100 megatons of CO2 emissions per year to about 1 gigaton CO2 mitigation potential per year. So the top ones were, unsurprisingly, things like offshore wind, which is grown to become a pretty large industrial energy source. But things like offshore wind, when you look at technology readiness level, they're already being commercially deployed at scale. the challenges that exist are largely policy and market related. And where Ocean Vision's sweet spot exists is in identifying underinvested areas and areas where we still have lots of science and engineering questions. So we decided, while offshore wind is a critical part of the portfolio, that we wouldn't focus on areas like that. So we looked at some that have a high CO2 mitigation potential, but are in the TRL levels of 4 to 6. TRL is technology readiness level. So these are ones that are just starting to come out of being theoretical to having prototypes in the lab or in the field, and need a lot of support, including convening and other support to move them down to where they can be commercially deployed.
So based on that criteria, you presented these at the summit. Could you share with our listeners what the focus areas are going to be and where opportunity will arise?
Yeah, so we picked two focus areas based on where this sweet spot lies, and one is using seaweed for low carbon products, and the second is the use of marine renewable energy, which we are using as a term that includes wave, tidal, ocean thermal energy gradient, which uses the difference in temperatures between the surface waters and the ocean depths to generate energy. And things like river energy and salinity gradient, which uses the gradient in salinity between typically freshwater and seawater where they meet to generate energy. So, the commonality between all these, as I said earlier, they are early stage, but still have significant potential and can benefit from our expertise in convening experts, fostering collaboration, and supporting early stage ventures through things like our Launchpad program. Maybe I'll go into each one and why they were attractive. So seaweed, particularly as a feedstock, is very promising, and people have thought about it for a long time. Unlike current feedstocks used for fuels like food crops such as corn and sugarcane, seaweeds do not compete with them typically for food. They don't need fertilizer or fresh water to grow. And they are much more productive as plants. They need 16 times less area for the same amount of CO2 carbon impact. And on the second one, the marine renewable energy, we've always known it has a really high theoretical potential for providing energy. The theoretical potential is about 3 times what the current worldwide energy consumption is. So that's massive. But we haven't yet managed to realize much of that potential. For example, we have 12 megawatts of tidal energy and 2 megawatts of wave energy across the world, which is really tiny. We think that what is exciting, particularly as we are at Ocean Visions, there's a possible tie-in to our existing programs of marine carbon dioxide removal, where marine renewable energy can help unlock some of that potential in MCDR, multiplying the effect. MCDR at scale has to go offshore, and it could be powered by marine renewable energy. So those are the two areas, and we're really excited to get started this year.
I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about some of the conversations that you've already had about how Ocean Visions is going to balance these reduction and removal efforts.
Yeah. I think there isn't really a trade-off. We do have to do both. And I think we are positioned to make some linkages between the two to really accelerate, both areas of work. In the area of seaweed cultivation, there's been a lot of work on understanding the carbon cycle and sequestration of carbon as in seaweed farms, and that understanding is going to also be beneficial to better understand and optimize seaweed use in products, and because a lot of the knowledge that's missing is around how much we can reduce emissions by using seaweed, say in construction material as opposed to, or in plastics as opposed to conventional plastics. So I think there's a lot of synergies, and I think we clearly look at it that way and are excited to work on reduce in addition to our marine carbon dioxide removal program.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm excited to see what comes next. So maybe as an ending note, what should our listeners look forward to and look out for in this new pillar?
Yeah, so the first area of work in the seaweed space is going to be road mapping, and this is going to building on our expertise in road mapping from our MCDR and Arctic sea ice work. So we'll be launching a similar initiative this year, where we'll convene experts across the seaweed value chain to assess challenges, not just science and technology challenges, but also policy, markets, and governance. And then this roadmap is just a starting point to align priorities for the sector for maximal impact. So it'll be an iterative process where we and others working on these priorities close the knowledge gap, surface new challenges and priorities, and work on that to move these technologies along. And the roadmaps will be published like the others as an interactive open access platform on our website, giving people an easy access point to the field. We really think that there are lots of people who might have the ability to help, who may be new to the sector, and having something like a roadmap, help them clearly define priorities and understand where they can add value. And if you're interested in participating, like I said, we'll be convening open meetings. Please reach out to me. This on the marine renewable energy side, based on our discussions with experts, we really think that we can help by supporting early stage innovators through a Launchpad program. Because I think a major challenge that we've heard from early stage technology companies is this access to top tier scientific and engineering expertise. Our Ocean Visions network includes independent, experienced professionals who can help these companies really accelerate development faster than they would alone. And these advisors provide unbiased, conflict-free guidance to these companies. So we'll open applications in fall 2025.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nikhil, for joining us, even post-summit, and sharing this important work with our listeners.
And I'm excited to see how much can be accomplished by the next summit.
Yeah.
Yes.
No pressure.
Awesome. All right.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, and for the rest of this episode, we are back in Vancouver doing all of these recordings, starting with Marianne Hagen. Welcome, Marianne. Thank you for being here. Let's start with a quick introduction. What brings you here today? What's your background? Where you're from?
Thank you so much for having me. I am a Norwegian. I co-lead a big climate intervention project called the Seabed Curtain Project. And what we are trying to do is we want to explore whether it's possible to delay the global sea level rise by delaying the melting of a few specific glaciers in Greenland and Antarctica. So it's a really, really difficult and big feat, but it could also be extremely important to the world if this project or this idea proves to have some reality.
Mm-hmm.
Marianne, when you talked about this at your panel, I'll quote you directly. When you first heard of this, I think you said that you thought it was a crazy idea, right? And so I'm curious if you could take us through your journey from thinking that it was a crazy idea to a major focus of your life.
I'm happy to do so. I love nature. I love birds. I'm a keen bird watcher. So I have a close relationship with nature, and I've been working tiptoeing around the climate issues throughout my career. And I've been very optimistic with regards to where we are heading. I noticed with great joy, all the nations signing up for conventions and protocols and doing their obligations and setting their targets. And I was really confident that it was going slow, but I was a great believer in the catch-up effect, so it was going to happen eventually. And I was working in the private sector in a large engineering company, and they also had super bold ambitions to transform from fossil fuels into renewables, which is what we all need. So I was working at this engineering company, and then I was invited because, people know Norway is a very small country, only 5.5 million people, so people know that my main interest is climate issues. So I was invited to bring some engineers and go to a workshop in Iceland to discuss this, what I absolutely describe as a crazy idea. And I mean, it is in many, many, many ways. But I was also, in addition to being executive vice president for sustainability, I also was responsible for communication in the company. And we were, as everybody else, recruiting and fighting for young, smart heads and hands. So I thought that this is going to be a good story. So just the ring of it, who you're going to call is not the Ghostbusters, it's Aker Solutions. When you really, really need to, find the solutions for the most difficult engineering tasks in the world, that's who you're going to call. And that's going to attract young people to come and work for us. So I went there and listened, and it was good. It was interesting, and I understood the physics of the idea. But the scale of it is really, really something else. So, but we were there, we did the marketing stuff that we needed to do, and then we went home. And then after a few days, I talked again with the engineers that accompanied me on the workshop. And they said, you know what, Marianne, we know it sounds crazy, but we also think it could actually work. It's difficult, it's the most difficult thing anyone ever have done before, but we think it's doable. So that kind of just stuck with me, that this crazy idea, and also brilliantly simple idea, could actually work. And if it could work, then it would change the lives of literally hundreds of millions of people that do not have to, forced migration because of sea level rise. So suddenly I kind of had this epiphany of I can spend the rest of my life trying to see if this idea is worth putting to life.
Mm-hmm. The panel that you were on and where you were discussing this idea was called Navigating Action on Global Tipping Points. And the tipping point we're talking about is the melting of major ice sheets. Can you say more about the specific idea and what it is that you're trying to engineer?
First of all, just as the starting point, I want to say that the only thing that matters long term is reducing emissions. There is no point in any climate interventions or any. That's the only thing. That's like number 1 to 100 priority, top priority. But if the world actually decides to own up to their own obligations and promises and start reducing emissions in a way that really matters, then it is interesting to discuss what could a plan B be. Is there anything we can do that can help us make sure that we actually have ice and the cryosphere exists when we get the emissions down and we succeed in removal of carbon dioxide? Then it's a point of exploring this plan B. So the idea here is if you just imagine you have seen a cold storage, normally with Norwegian salmon or Canadian salmon inside, and if it's in Bangkok, it's super hot on the outside and it's super cold on the inside. You can see this image in your head of the truck going back and forth through a plastic curtain carrying the frozen salmon. So we know that it is possible to separate the warm from the cold. It's been done many times, and it's part of our everyday lives. So that is kind of the general idea. Because if you look at the water in front of Thwaites, which is the big glacier at risk in West Antarctica, the water in front of the ice sheet is ice cold, literally ice cold, because it consists of melting ice. It's light and fresh and cold. On the bottom, on the other hand, you have hot, salty, heavy currents. And increasingly often these hot currents, hot water, reaches all the way into the ice sheet, and it just eats away, erodes the ice sheet from beneath. And that is a major contributor to the sea level rise. So then the question becomes, is it possible to block or to hinder that warm water from actually reaching the ice and eroding it from beneath? And that is what this idea is exploring.
Okay.
But at an incredible scale. How do you describe the scale of what you're talking about?
Oh, what the science tells us is that it's about 80 kilometers, the stretch that we would need to, put a physical hinder into. Mm-hmm. And I was just looking, how can I illustrate this? And then I realized that the Manhattan is 21 kilometers long. So that means that if you could envision a curtain, the height of Empire State, running from tip to tip on Manhattan Island 4 times over. Mm-hmm. That's what we are trying to explore, whether it could work and save the ice, basically.
Yeah, so definitely a huge engineering challenge. You mentioned in the panel that you are working on this in a natural trial in Svalbard in Norway, where there is a natural curtain, if I understood that correctly. Can you say more about what you're doing there and how this natural occurrence maybe inspires or serves as proof of concept?
It's way too early to call it the proof of concept, but the way we approach this project is, first we need to know, will it likely work? Is it possible to do? And if it likely would work and it's possible to do, we still need to figure out, is it the smartest thing we could do? Mm-hmm. If this is number 876, we should just forget about it and concentrate on the top 10. So you cannot just go to Antarctica and put up a curtain. Mm-hmm. You have to start really, really baby steps. And the approach then is to get the answers to all the questions we have as quick as possible, as cheap as possible, and involving as many scientists as possible to widen the community that works on these issues. So one of the things that we are doing right now with the funding that we have is looking at a fjord in Svalbard where you do not need to deploy anything at all, because this fjord is already blocked by an island straight across the mouth of the fjord. So anyone can go there, and you can look at the NASA pictures of that fjord, and you can see that it has ice for much longer period of time than the neighboring fjords because of the restricted inflow of warm water. So the question is, how does that affect life? Because that is the big question. It's not enough a curtain to actually work. If it does a lot of harm, then it's a bad idea. So we're looking for exit signs. We are trying to answer all the questions we have as cheap as you can, as fast as you can. And if you get answers that is not aligned with what we're trying to achieve, which is something good, then you exit the whole project. Mm-hmm. So by doing the comparative study of this Van Mayen Fjord with the neighboring fjord, it can give us information about how a restriction actually affects life inside that fjord. And that is important knowledge.
Yeah.
There are so many questions, of course. As you consider all of those questions, at this point, when you rationalize this, realistically, what do you think is the odds or possibility that a full deployment of this would be necessary, desirable, would actually happen?
Let me first just state from the bottom of my heart, I hope this will not be necessary. I hope when we can provide people your age with a basis for a decision to be made in, say, 10 or 15 years, you will say, thank you so much. We don't need this. We have done the emission reduction job that is necessary. So this is no longer necessary. If the answer is that we have not made the progress, I think that the biggest challenge, this is the harshest environment in the world. It is only ice-free a month a year, if lucky. You need a lot of icebreakers to get down there. It's a big curtain. You need to produce the material. We don't have that material today. The logistics of it would be super difficult because of the sheer size and the environment. But before that is a question to be answered a long time from now. So what we would like to do first now is to deploy a curtain design to test the mooring, test the design, start testing the materials, and start testing a curtain's ability to actually block water in the Norwegian mainland fjord. Low key, that is not geoengineering, that is just doing testing. And we already started deploying measurements instruments that will give us a before state, and we are working closely with indigenous peoples in the area. So hopefully we'll engage them to also monitor their fishing activities in the fjord before, during, and after the removal of a curtain. So that will also give us a lot of helpful information. And if we don't get, the access, the off-ramp messages during those two trials, then maybe we can hopefully go to Svalbard and try something in the fjord in Svalbard, where there actually also is an ice sheet. You don't need the ice sheet on the fjord to see if it separates temperature. But if we find out it does separate successfully and efficiently the temperature, then the ice sheet will be the next step. So going to Svalbard, and then maybe if the Greenlanders want to explore this, then maybe the next step will be Greenland.
Super interesting, fascinating, and kind of scary for sure. It's really interesting to think about these really large scale potential interventions that might be necessary if we don't, as you say, do the right decarbonization and removal. I wonder, as the closing perspective, as Ocean Visions stated in the beginning of the summit, Ocean Visions focuses on these 4 Rs: the reduce, remove, repair, and reach. And this potential idea, I suppose, fits into this repair bucket. And as you're walking around the conference, talking with people, meeting people, what is the sort of sense you get and the questions that people ask, reactions that can give an indication of sort of what to expect the next couple of years?
Curiosity, I would say. And this eerie feeling that it might be necessary to have these options in a not too distant future. So I think that would be the way I would sum it up. There's a couple of things I would like to mention here. And with our project, this is a locally targeted project with a global effect. And it will also be governed by the Antarctic Treaty System, which makes it a little bit easier maybe than if it had to be a UN decision. One thing I would like to mention from the panel was a very interesting suggestion from Rafe Pomerance. He said that let's introduce a second metric, not in addition to temperature. Let's add sea level rise as a second metric.
Metric to what?
For decision makers. Yes. So you can go to ask Florida, how many centimeters or inches of water can you handle? What's your limit? How much are you willing to pay for not going over that limit? So I think that is a super interesting idea that I would like to take from the panel and from the discussion here and see if I can help bring further into.
Marianne, I'd like to ask one more thing, though.
Okay.
So you are visualizing a really scary situation. At the same time, I hear you say, you describe yourself as an optimist, but mostly I feel that optimism. You radiate optimism. And so I'm just curious, like, how do you do that? And do you have advice for others to maintain optimism while working in a climate space?
That is a tough question, actually. Thank you for saying that I radiate optimism, because I don't feel optimistic all the time. I am kind of super worried that we're not taking climate issues seriously enough. What's so scary about the tipping points, of course, is that it's irreversible changes of the Earth's systems. Changes from one state to another, and that's hard to imagine. But it gives me hope that this really brilliantly simple idea can set off young people, old people's heads and brains. You can just see that they're starting to work on this idea. They visualize it. They start asking really intelligent questions. And I just think there's a lot of hope in watching that process happening in almost everybody I talk to about this. If this enormous challenge for the world can be changed or can be helped with this brilliant simple idea, what else can be solved with the young brains of today, with a fantastic education system, with all the science, with everything we know? I believe that there's a lot of equally good ideas and even better ideas out there that somebody else can pursue. And that gives me hope for the future.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your ideas, your perspective, your hope, and your optimism.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Rama. Thank you for being with us.
Great to be here.
Thank you for being back. For those who don't know, Rama was also on the Ocean Vision Summit episode from 2 years ago. And I wonder if we can start with, well, first off, a brief introduction, who you are, what brings you here to the Ocean Vision Summit, and then maybe reflecting a bit on what has changed, where have we gotten to in the last 2 years?
It's great to be here, Anna and Danny. My name is Kilaparthi Ramakrishna. I'm the director of the Marine Policy Center and senior advisor to the president on ocean and climate solutions at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. A lot has changed. 2 years ago, we were at the very preliminary stages of exploring, not from a scientific point of view, because they have been at it for quite some time, but in terms of what the science has to say about the policy implications of climate stabilization. We have made a lot of progress. The IPCC is tasked with producing a report on marine carbon dioxide removal. The latest Conference of the Parties in Baku agreed on carbon market mechanism. There is a lot more interest from the community to explore every aspect of this, particularly with reference to MRV, monitoring, reporting, and verification. There is also interest in terms of engaging with the community, folks that are potentially impacted by negative consequences of it, if there are any, and engaging with key stakeholders, whether they are environmental justice community, environmental community, and the whole range. So a lot has happened.
So in that context, like when you look around the globe, where do you have hope right now for the advancing of research?
Well, with the Biden administration, there was a lot of support for finding solutions and the whole of government approach, the Inflation Reduction Act, and that has changed with this current administration, which as one of its very first acts withdrew from the Paris Climate Agreement, also suspended sending delegations to IPCC meetings and so on. So if you focus that question with reference to United States, things are a bit uncertain and we don't know how it is going to move forward. But for the rest of the world, it has acted as a reason to do more. European Union is very much on the issue. Brazil, which is hosting COP30, has taken on these issues. If you look at the Brazilian presidency of the G20, the decisions to include ocean matters in various declarations that they produced is pretty encouraging. So it's a glass half full, half empty kind of situation. But more and more, the rest of the world and the international organizations are understanding and acting on climate stabilization. I mean, I do want to say one thing, though. We have been at it now for more than 30 years, and we have not reduced our emissions. So as anybody would tell you, if you are in a hole and want to get out, the first thing you want to do is not continue digging. So we need to stop burning fossil fuels, which we should stop emitting more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. But even if we do all that, given the residency of these gases in the atmosphere, we need to think about removing carbon from the atmosphere. There are a lot of solutions, technological, natural. We need to explore all those solutions and see where we go with it. We need to make sure that the policymakers understand that it is doable. The solution, the goal is within their reach. And once the science comes together and then says that yes, it is, then we can move forward.
I wonder if I can pick up on that. I guess I would maybe nuance not having reduced the emissions in the way that we have not reduced them enough. I think we've seen positive advancements in certain places, in certain countries, that at least we have reduced some emissions somewhere. So I wonder if I can refer back to something you said in 2023 in the episode, which was that we need to raise the possibility of where we would like to be. And if you can share more about in which sense have we raised that possibility in the last 2 years, with regards to the policymakers you mentioned, with regards to the science, of reducing those emissions and removing the ones that are residual.
Right. I mean, we need to think about this world community in all of its complexity. You're absolutely right. We made tremendous progress in many countries through technologies, through various policies that are put in place. But when you think about 193 countries and their various national economic circumstance and what they need to do to develop and get the basic benefits of growth, the total emissions continue to increase. So there is progress. If we were not doing all that we had done through the climate convention process, situation would be much worse. But what we need to think about now is how to accelerate that progress. And accelerating that progress essentially must include phasing out and eliminating fossil fuel use. And once we do that, then the kinds of solutions that we're talking about, whether it is new sources of energy, the emphasis on blue economy that is sustainable, and the kinds of things that we're talking about, carbon removal, not just at deep ocean, but close to shore, and also other technology developments like direct air capture and so on and so forth. So we know, compared with 2 years ago, we know a lot more, and we know what works. And but we have not taken that to scale, and we need to do that and then see, once you take it to scale, what impact it is going to have, and then be able to get hold of the problem and actually reverse the course.
You play such an important convening role, not just at the summit, but across the community. I'm curious about if you could talk a little bit about Ocean Pavilion and how that came together.
Well, the ocean enthusiasts have been going to climate conferences of the parties all of time. But what they were doing was going to the green zone and having a 1-day or sometimes even 2-day events where they bring the best ocean experts to come together and then say what impact they have on the climate negotiators. It was an important exercise, but it hasn't reached the decision makers, the negotiators. So what we decided about 4 years ago is to say that we will take it to the blue zone, have a pavilion along with intergovernmental organizations and country pavilions. And then not only the location is important, of course, but in addition to the location, we wanted to bring the best oceanographic institutions from around the world to be partners of the Ocean Pavilion. And in fact, one thing that I'm really very proud of is when we were thinking of this, the goal was to call it Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution Pavilion or WHOI Pavilion. But we did not want that. We wanted this to be called Ocean Pavilion so everybody can take ownership of it. And our partners did that, and we were able to have an impact on the global stocktake. We are able to have an impact on the ocean climate change dialogue. We were able to have impact on NDCs and NAPs. A lot more needs to be done, but it's because this entire community, not just from the United States, from Europe, but from developing countries as well, coming together and then talking about these issues. And so I think that has had a profound impact, and it is continuing.
And that's why I ask. I mean, because it seems like such a huge moment to really center ocean into these conversations and to create a home for it, to create a home for all these conversations. So in light of that, and in light of everything that's happening here at the summit this week, and in light of your 30 years plus of experience, I'm just curious, like, what's your level of hope and optimism moving forward? Like you bring such perspective, and at the conference, there's so many people from all levels of their careers. And I would love to hear from you about where you see things right now.
I'm hopeful. I think we can get hold of this problem. We can solve it. We can move forward. We can stabilize the climate. It sometimes boggles the mind that as a world community, even as a country in the United States, we spend so much money on so many things, and what we need in terms of financial resources in exploring solutions that are out there fully, and then finding which one of them is the most suitable one is not that costly. Yeah, and we just need to put that effort into that. And my colleagues at WHOI are looking into that. We want to do field research. We want to do, use the latest technology that we have in terms of monitoring, reporting, and verification, whether it is deep ocean, ocean iron fertilization, or near ocean alkalinity improvements, and various other things. But the process of getting permits and environmental impact statements is a must. We should do that. That takes time. But more important is we need to put some money into it. We need to go there and then do it. So I'm very, very hopeful, and I hope when we get to the turning point, the resources will flow. I mean, like I said, Anna, 2 years ago, and I still believe in it, we have to stop looking at the ocean either as a victim or as a villain. It is 71% of the planet Earth. We need to marshal the enormous good that it can do in terms of improving the planetary environment across the board, including climate stabilization. That's why what I do at WHOI is important, and what we're trying to do with the Ocean Pavilion is important. We want to bring ocean and the enormous knowledge that we have of what it can do for climate stabilization to the decision makers and to the world community at large.
Fantastic. I think that's a wonderfully optimistic point to end on. Thank you so much for joining us again, Rama.
Oh,
and enjoy the rest of your summit.
Thank you, Rama, and thank you for decades of incredible work.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, Dave. Tired Thursday afternoon. We made it.
It's been great. 3 great days here.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us after what was certainly a long and exhausting and busy few days for you. We wanted to just sort of wrap this episode with you reflecting on the 3 days, what you learned, what our listeners should walk away with. To start, would you mind introducing yourself very briefly and telling us who you are?
I'm David Goic, and I'm the Chief Scientist of Ocean Visions.
There we go.
At the start of this, the introduction, there was a good description of how you started your career here. I believe the term was ending your career, I think is what you used. But you have a really great perspective on the growth of Ocean Visions, the growth of this summit. As you look back and compare this to previous summits, how do you reflect on this summit? And then, if I may, how does it reflect on the growth of our field overall?
Well, just to clarify, it was our founder and chairman, Manu Di Lorenzo, who started his opening remarks by saying that I ended my career to join Ocean Vision. So I was playing and riffing off that.
In science, and then you're
of
in
course.
science.
Well, I still do science. I am the chief scientist of Ocean Visions. And my job now is to synthesize the science and figure out how to use the science to inform evidence-based actions within our organization, right? So it's a different role in science, but it's still a science-based role. This summit, I leave the summit super energized. It's really amazing for me to watch the growth of the organization, watch the growth of the summit, and watch the growth of the field, and see how they're all mirrored in one another. You know, we brought 400 people together in Vancouver, and there's just really incredible energy. I heard a statistic that there were 37 countries represented here. And so that's amazing growth, and it really speaks to this effort to try to grow a global movement on ocean climate solutions. Each of the summits, there has been really profound growth within the community as it's moved from a very niche topic to one that has just grown and grown and grown, and now is starting to attract much more interest from people who were previously skeptical of these technologies and these ideas just a few years earlier. It's really starting to enter the mainstream of conversation in ocean climate conservation. Now, we still have a long way to go, but I'm really inspired by what I see are some of the important first steps.
I think it's really notable that 2 years ago, I listened to the episode that I did then. Maybe that was my own doing, or it was more the focus of the summit. It was mainly removal. It was mainly carbon dioxide removal. And at this summit, it was really wonderful for me to see the focus on the other 3 R's as well, which I think is reflected in the episode we did just now. I wonder what your reflection is on that, and how you think the next 2 years will sort of drive these different R's forward, and what folks can look forward to if we were to sit similarly like this again here in 2 years.
Well, you know, the 4 R's are the reason that I love this job, because I get to work on such diverse things, and the aspects of working on ocean-based carbon reductions, ocean-based carbon removals, what we call marine ecosystem repair, which are the interventions to preserve critical marine ecosystems, and REACH, the efforts to expand the global conversation, are all so diverse, and they have so many different and exciting aspects to them and their own unique challenges. And so I really enjoy the flexibility to work across them. It's been a lot of work for us to set up and develop each of these as their own powerful, compelling programs that together form this holistic agenda. And we've been spending years intentionally building up each program and identifying the synergies with the other programs. And so what you're seeing at this summit has been this culmination of the last several years of hard work. But I really feel like we're on this kind of exponential curve where you're only going to see accelerated progress from here on out as we continue to build momentum, find like-minded colleagues who want to work on these things, and continue to identify synergies that together provide a really compelling perspective on what could be a new, holistic, comprehensive agenda for ocean climate solutions.
So as chief scientist at Ocean Visions, I'm curious to hear, particularly from you, who's already very knowledgeable on this topic, what surprised you? What did you learn from the summit this week? And what are you taking away?
There is this really interesting sense that I've gotten at this summit that the conversation is expanding to new parties. And so that creates new opportunities to engage lots of people in the really comprehensive set of challenges that are needed to scale any of these technologies. We know that these technologies need new research and development. You know, for marine carbon dioxide removal, we know that there's a complex field of monitoring, reporting, and verification that needs to be stood up. For any of these new technologies, we need environmental impact assessments. Those are all very reasonably straightforward, and there's precedence for what we need. I think what is inspiring for me is seeing all these new people joining the conversation, those who have policy expertise, those who have community engagement expertise, those who think a lot about setting up governance systems, and also really seeing the conversation expand geographically. Just a few years ago, this conversation was largely centered in the US and maybe a few key international partners, Canada among them. Now we're starting to see really widespread geographic growth. There was an entire session at this summit dedicated to an African-led roadmap for standing up marine carbon dioxide removal technologies on the African continent. This follows from a workshop that was African-led in Tanzania just last month. And so, you're just starting to see these early signs, but powerful still, of really widespread geographic growth in interest and engagement with these technologies. That's really important, I think, when we think about ocean climate solutions, because we've always been really clear that, look, the ocean, we live on a blue planet. We all are touched by the ocean, and we all need to contribute to these solutions. These solutions will not reach the scales where they can see their full potential if they're the domain of one or two countries alone. So we need to see that conversation grow, that participation grow, and that inclusivity grow. And that's what I saw at this summit.
I really agree. Like walking around, going in the hallways, there is a great energy growing, a great excitement, and a lot of momentum growing. And I hope that for everybody in the audience who's listened to this podcast, that we've been able to give you a little bit of that energy, enthusiasm, and growth.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And thank you so much for having us again at the summit, and for joining us after what has been intensive, enlightening couple of days.
Well, thanks for the invitation to join you again, and thanks for coming to the summit.
All right, let's head home. All right, I think that's a wrap on this episode. Thank you, Danny, for co-hosting this episode with me and joining me on these interviews. I am left with a lot of optimism, a lot of hope. I'm really glad that our interviewees shared their perspectives with us. And I think in particular, I'm thinking back to Brad's introduction about the necessary ambition that we should all be left with, hopefully, and take forward. What do you feel?
I feel the same way. It's been a lot of really great conversations, a lot of great ideas. I hope the audience enjoys it as much as we do. But I'm glad that you brought up Brad and ambition. So coming back to what he said in the introduction, this challenge for us all to raise our ambitions. I think that if there's something to take out of this episode, I hope that people hold on to that challenge, because if all of us can raise our ambitions, clearly we have a lot of work to do, and our goals are lofty and big, and we need to raise our ambitions in order to get there. I think it's an excellent point, and I think that's a great thing to take away from this episode.
Absolutely. And I think it'll be really exciting to perhaps see where we're at in 2 years from today.
Yeah.
Compare, contrast, and reflect. And last but not least, we'll be back.
We'll be back. And we look forward to seeing him, and we look forward to, I hope that we can do this again. Thanks everybody in the audience. Since I'm not often here, I would like to take the chance to thank all the listeners for following us along on this journey. And Anna, thank you for this invitation.
And thank you, Danny. For everyone who doesn't know, he does a lot of work in the background, and it's immensely helpful and valued. Thank you to our listeners. Thank you for following along on this summit episode. Be sure to subscribe, leave a comment, share this episode widely if you liked it. And we look forward to welcoming you back in 2 weeks from now.
Thank you.